Hello and welcome to this week's Cian S Rugby podcast. Fortnight ago, a little bit more, we brought you a comprehensive deep dive of the EPCR and then previewed the season's tournament. But as we reach the halfway stage of the pool stages, I've assembled a strong duo panel of experts to shine some sometimes harsh and sometimes nice tinted light on each of the four Irish provinces. Join me to discuss the pool stage action so far, an excellent duo, and we have a new Christmas cap to hand out, like in the Premier League. Joining me for the first time is Ulster fan and community radio host Adam Latham. So welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on. And like all experimental teams, we need an old head to guide them through it. When that failed, I called upon Cian Willour. Cian, welcome back.
Thanks for having us, Ken. It's an old dog for the hard road, you know.
Yeah. We won't get into old dogs the hard road in case it goes down a different line, considering the week that it was. I'm already dosed with a flu, as you can probably hear. It's been a rough week. It's like that meme about like, oh, it's only Monday. It's been a long week, guys. But as always, before we kick off, I'd like to remind our YouTube viewers that you can listen to us wherever you want on the go, wherever you get your podcast, and vice versa. If you want some visual representation of our three lovely faces, you can catch us on YouTube as well. We'll work in order the rounds, and we'll probably take a little bit of a lighter look on round one first, because it was bleak. Only one win from four in the opening weekend. That came from Leinster, and that is where we will start a first ever win in La Rochelle, or against La Rochelle, through the wind and rain on the French coast. Cian, it was said that Leinster needed to win that game from a emotional standpoint, I suppose, and they did. And it's kind of hard to find fault with them.
Yeah, but before we go any further, Kaelan, I just want to promise you that despite however I sound for the rest of this pod, I take no pleasure in any of what we're going to talk about throughout it. So I think to keep everything above the waterline, I think we should agree a safe word for you, Kaelan. So do you have any suggestions for a safe word you'd like to use?
I feel like you have a suggestion that you're going to fire at me.
No. Let's go with pineapples. Pineapples is your safe word, okay? So if I go too far with it, just say pineapples, I'll stop. Yeah, it was a pretty significant win over La Rochelle. All right, it was absolutely 100% needed at this point. You know, it's three horrible, heartbreaking losses. And you know, as Leinster fans, we are not used to those. Except against La Rochelle and yourselves now, thankfully for last season. But yeah,
boy, Jack Crowley.
Yeah, two finals and a semi as well for La Rochelle. So yeah, to say this is needed is an understatement. It was absolutely horrendous conditions there on the day. As we can, as anyone watching it anyway, definitely saw. They took an early lead with a penalty from Antoine Hostoy, but Leinster responded with the only try of the match from Jordan Larmour, converted by Harry Byrne, who did well on the day. And then Frawley added three crucial penalties as well, who also did well on the day. There's been a bit of that going about between the two of them. It's pretty error strewn, lots of handling errors in the rain. Early sin bins from McCarthy and Dante for the schmozzle and related activities. I think it was kind of needed to haul off one from each side to try and get some control on it, because frankly, it was one of the most physical club games I think I've possibly ever watched. Everyone was getting absolutely stuck in at the ruck, which was kind of nice to see from a Leinster supporter side of things, because it was I have to say, from the last three meetings, it kind of felt a little bit one-sided. So it was good to see some parity being hit there. James Ryan, Caelan Doris, the key for that physicality of the ruck. Will Connors was an inspired selection to start. I hadn't seen it coming, I have to say, but yeah, it worked. He kept Skelton and the other heavy carriers chopped down on the ground. Really kept them quiet. Fullbacks had a really hard go of it that day. Both Keenan and Dulin were, especially Dulin, frankly, were absolutely amazing given the weather conditions. It's a hard enough job with the level of kicking that was going to be going on anyway, but especially with that weather on top of it, you wouldn't want it. Ryan gave a nod towards Nienaber's influence on the team's defence afterwards, and it does look like he is having an impact on the way Leinster's defence is shaping up this season. Although the form outside of this match calls for a little bit of worry in terms of unforced errors and a little bit
Kind
of
of looking
untidy.
past the results, I think, is where the issue. Like, it's 8 wins in a
Yeah.
row, but it's not been
Oh
pretty in
yeah,
any of them.
no, and I mean, like, I don't mind winning ugly, but it's just
It's not very Leinstertainment, is
we don't use that word.
unless we got blue glasses, that blue Leinster glasses in a Brown Thomas bag. We don't use that word.
No, let's not. Yeah, it's less than convincing at times. It's a little bit disjointed, but not disjointed in this game whatsoever. But there was very little focus on ball and hand attack. So I don't know if it was because there was such an emphasis on the kicking game anyway, they were able to concentrate more on the defensive side, trying to implement that new system. But it certainly worked in this case, and yeah, gave us a win 3 years in the making.
I'm sure if you had the opportunity to take either the semi-final or one of the two finals or winning in La Rochelle, you'd obviously take winning in La Rochelle in the first round of the pool stages. Of course.
I would trade that for a cup in a heartbeat. Of course I would. Don't be ridiculous.
Star. Adam, very impressive win for Leinster, as we said, in that game. And I suppose they got the monkeys off their back, but as Cian said, they didn't play necessarily spectacularly. But I suppose what was probably better for Leinster is some of the lesser known heroes stood up that day. Kieran Frawley was one of them, and a certain man named Hugo Keenan, if you've ever heard of him, was phenomenal on the night.
Yeah, I think when it comes to sort of Kieran Frawley, at the minute, is he going to be a 10? Is he going to be a 15? Hugo Keenan setting in 50, like Hugo Keenan for me is probably it's pretty hard to go past him even for the next World Cup to be a 15. I think he's proved himself time and time again, and even in the last World Cup, he's just been absolutely incredible. It's sort of the issue I find with Frawley is that it's just that I think there's two different sets of thinking between coaches. We've got Andy Farrell on one side, wants him to be a 10, and Leo Cullen that sort of plays him anywhere bar 10. It's an interesting case. And I just feel like, I don't know, I think Kieran Frawley needs to find a position fast, and he needs to settle in that position because, to be honest, I said about over the week about spreading talent among provinces. It might just come to a point where if he is going to be a 10, is he going to start in front of Sam Pendergast? Is he not in the future? Is he going to have to go to somewhere like Connacht, Munster, or Munster have got Frawley. Ulster probably need him. This is going to be my first sort of remnants of Ulster need players. Please help me. But like there's sort of like, I feel like all provinces need to have a balance, and I feel like Leinster at the minute, their sort of machine is running so well, and the fact that you just have so many back rows coming through. You've got Deegan, who's a man on a mission. You had Scott Penny, who's like always just consistent. You've got Hugo Keenan, who came through the sevens system, but he naturally came right back into 15s so effortlessly. But it just seems like Leinster's conveyor belt just keeps on going and going and going, which it must be a lovely thing as a Leinster supporter. And as an Ireland fan, I love it. But it's just like where it's sort of like a help and a hindrance to you guys out, I think, in terms of like in that big game plays, who you can play at 10 right now. There's a big Johnny Sexton gap. You've got Harry Byrne, Ross Byrne, you've got Sam Pendergast, and you've got Kieran Frawley. Who are you going to rely to make that big game play?
Yeah.
You've got four. You've got four.
Looks like Ross Byrne at the moment.
It's Ross. It's Ross Byrne.
It's Ross, yeah.
The one thing I would say about Frawley is we have seen again with Nienaber, I think, coming in more of a shift towards 6-2 system. And in that Frawley is on the bench ahead of Harry, because Frawley
Yeah.
covers
Yeah, I think
centre, fly
utility
off,
back. Yeah.
fullback.
Yeah.
So he could actually see more game time off of the bench, and possibly a 10, possibly not a 10 at any given time. But
it's not like you need to start for Leinster to get into the Ireland squad, and that's in no way is a dig, but it is kind of the way it's been. Like, you don't have to be an instant starter. You just kind of have to be showing that you're doing something. But then at the same time, he is 26 years of age. He's got one international cap. Like, eventually you do have to make a decision. Are you going to sit around on the bench and hopefully break into an Ireland squad, or are you going to try and be the man somewhere else? I think that's the question he's probably asking himself, because it is a contract year. You know, everyone has those ambitions, you'd imagine, anyway, at the top level, that they want to be that guy. One guy who is that guy, I will get on to this game next, is Finn Russell. Him and Bath head coach Johan van Graan, of course, Van Graan, stole the show. Bath thumping Ulster in the wreck, and Adam doesn't need reminding, Keane doesn't need reminding, no one does. A rudderless showing, I suppose, Adam, but like, really at that point, it was 3 losses in a row, and it just looked bleak for Ulster.
It is very bleak. I feel like we had a very good first 50, and I feel like for the 2 games beforehand, it was the same. Have a good first 50, and then for some reason just click and just fall apart, like, completely. Finn Russell was unbelievable. I think they've shown why he was signed for that much money. Isn't he the top, one of the top paid players in the Premiership?
Yeah, he is.
Coming from Racing to Bath, who were struggling last year, and now all of a sudden, this all, like, not a complete unit just yet. Like, they were linked to Snyman and they were linked to Ardle as well. It was just poor. Like, my opinion of Ulster at the minute is that like, Dan McFarlane came out that week saying about there was issues in training, and they didn't train. And from my opinion, there's it comes from the top down, and there's something up with the coaching system that isn't quite working. Whether we're focusing more on mauls than anything else to score tries, because there was a good 2 years where we were just scoring maul tries, and Tom Stewart was the top try scorer in the URC, which I quite liked. Tom Stewart's really good, but there's part of me that thinks that we lack in big game, players having big game experience. I think Nathan Doak was a little bit slow at the rucks. I feel like there was an essence of him being quite slow at the rucks. I also feel like Hitsoff was still settling in as well. Whether or not there's still a World Cup hangover at that time when it did came into the Bath situation, I don't know, because I'm sure we're going to talk about round 2, because there was certainly a night and day fixture there. Some people even I saw on Twitter were jokingly blaming it on the fact that we've got a 4G pitch now. We were playing on mud again. I can't say that for sure, but I just feel like we looked tired as soon as it hit 60 minutes. We just looked tired, and we looked like the game was won by 50 minutes, and then we just shrugged off tackles. And I feel like that's been an issue for the last 2 years, is our defense. We went from having Jared Payne as a defense coach, and our defense was quite good, and our attack seemed really spot on with Dwayne Peel. And now we have this sort of system where it almost looks like we don't use our backs enough. Yeah. Like, we don't utilize our backs. Like, we had Rob Balakoon a couple of years ago scoring a hat-trick against Toulouse, and we're also winning in Toulouse, to the next week not using him at all. And then since then we haven't really been utilizing him enough. I feel like Balakoon needs to be, our back 3 needs to be utilized more. You can have Stuart Murren at 15, Mike Lorien at 15, or Will Addison at 15. I quite like Stockdale just staying in 11, so I'm not going to put him in that sort of fullback sphere. But I feel like, and also in the centers as well, Hume and McCluskey, we just need to utilize the backs more. I feel like our forward pack isn't one of the biggest European packs. I feel like we're sort of this on the smaller side of packs.
And they
when we
want to
compare
play
to the
like a
big
big
boys.
team, which is the
Yeah,
head scratcher. Like, why do you
yeah,
have Balakoon, Stockdale? I really like Stuart Moore as a 15
yeah,
personally.
yeah, yeah.
McCluskey, Hume. That's an outrageous back five of your
Hmm.
back line. And you play a 12-man attack. Like you look at the quarterfinal against Connacht last year. They tried to bully Connacht into submission. Jacob Stockdale was the only back who did anything in that game.
Hmm.
And Connacht just went, no, not having it. Yeah, and that literally lost them a URC quarterfinal and a chance of a home semi-final.
Yeah, I feel like it was so frustrating because what Ulster do is we've got Billy Burns at the minute, in my opinion, as a 10. I feel like he's been injured for the last 3 years. He always sort of hobbles. The last
He has that
it's like a
look about him.
season or two. Oh yeah, but like there was a season or two where all he did was sort of hobble on one leg, and we just kept on playing him. We had a few weeks last year. Sorry, my headphones are breaking. I'm getting new ones at Christmas. So um
We can still hear you. That's all that matters.
grand. We had a few weeks last year where all we did was play Billy and he wasn't fit. And I feel like we're starting to see a massive knock on from that because we had Jake Flannery. We have him, and coming into this week, Billy's injured. Jake's going to be in for a big game. We don't really have the depth in the back line. Like we have the depth past 10, like after 10 down to 9, we don't really have that depth. We have Billy Burns and Jake Flannery at 10. Mike Laurie, who is supposed to be the next Big 10, but McFarland moved him to 15. It worked, but at the minute, he's looking a bit off. Our nines, we have Cooney and Doak, and at the minute, Doak's in favor, but I just felt like he was slow, and I feel like he needs just way more experience to just push on. And we are a 9. We play off 9 a lot. We play off 9 way too much for my liking in terms of, as I said before, small pack, act like a big pack. When we don't have Henderson, it's almost like we have a way smaller pack because Henderson leads from the front. We
Yeah.
need Henderson, and of course his injury record. We haven't really seen him as much for Ulster as we do for Ireland. But when we still play with the likes of O'Connor and Treadwell, still trying to bang up the middle like Henderson would and not quite getting there, it's frustrating because you've got a pack like Baths, and they will just bully us off the ball like completely.
It's the number one rule. You have to play to your strengths. Like
Yeah.
it's the one thing that kind of makes you want to shake that Ulster coaching staff. Like you
Mhm.
have players who are good at one thing, and yet you're playing players that are playing a game plan that suits like 1 out of every 4 or 5 players on the 23.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't work in the professional
No.
game. And listen, they did get the job done against Racing, and we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah.
against a side like Bath, who,
Yeah.
yeah, they've got explosive ball carriers. We'll give them that, like Ollie Lawrence in particular,
Oh yeah.
and they're a solid outfit. But like for Ulster to just be blown off the park
Yeah.
at the end, it's just not good enough.
I think at the start of the season, I was looking to get, rather than 2 home wins, 2 away wins. On paper, we were looking to get 2 home wins, like the 2 English sides away. Our sort of history in England over the past 10 years has been brilliant. Like we beat Bath the last time we played them. We beat Bath the last like 3 times we played them at the Rec. I feel like Bath is always one of those teams that we shouldn't have been as frightened of coming into it, just because in everyone's head there is just the Finn Russell factor, and Finn Russell will drive along this team, and he did because the forwards gave him the chance to. Whereas Ulster's setup is that it's forwards or nothing. The forwards will set it up for the forwards, and it sometimes will pass it to the backs, and sometimes Billy will crossfield kick it, but it's every once in a blue moon now. Like I remember at the very start of Billy coming into Ulster, it used to be cross kick after cross kick, nice backs rugby, but now it's just forwards, kick to the corner, lose the line out. Like the line out's been such a big issue this year as well, which I don't understand if that's maybe coming from the Ireland camp, because Tom Stewart and Rob Herring were in the Ireland camp. Maybe it's over the last couple of years Ulster have had issues, but when Henderson comes into that setup again, his calling makes it 10 times better. But then it's take him out of the equation again, and we just look like a shadow in the lineouts, a shine out in carrying. Kitsoff is a massive unit, and he's going to benefit our team. I feel like Tom O'Toole as well. Athletically, he's grown, and I feel like he's only going to improve because he's in the Ireland setup, learning from the players. And I feel like Tom O'Toole will only get better in terms of that to brood up and strength up. I feel like Rob Herring is a good ball carrier, and like he will not back down. He will not back down. Say what you like about the man, but he won't back down. Tom Stewart, it's another case of like Doak. He's a really, really good player, but there's almost that inexperience when you come against a big Bath pack, when you come against a big Racing pack, or like any type of pack like Leinster, for example. If we come against a big Leinster pack, we need sort of our stalwarts are like not to try anything. Like Dan McFarland at the minute really loves trying out new players. Whether that will work for us or not, I don't know. We're like the second most used players in the URC at the minute, one behind Leinster, which is incredible. It's incredible, but will that work? Has it worked? Certainly my breakout star of the season's been McCann. Like but we lost him, and then all of a sudden we're starting Matty Ray, which, no offense to him, isn't a European flanker. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I suppose the one thing when Ulster have Henderson and Herring in particular is, yes, leadership, absolutely. They probably punch above their weight as well, which is a good sign. Like, and we'll get on to Munster now. Like, that was probably something that we thought they could do for a while, but now under this game plan, where they are looking for quick ball, you really need to punch above your weight, especially without Klein and Dogbo, Sneeman and Keane. Not having those lads was costly against Bayonne, because when they're bringing on the likes of Taji, who is genuinely one of the biggest rugby players you will see in the game, they look like they're going to outmuscle us at the end. It finished a 17-all draw. Yes, it was underwhelming, but it could have went the other way. It could have been a rare home defeat to a French side.
Yeah, it could have easily been, you know. And I mean, Munster started that game strongly, kind of as was expected. You know, the good tries from Shea McCarthy and from Coombs, and Coombs carrying was strong. Everything was looking good. Crowley, 7 points from kicks in the first half. Everything was absolutely spot on. And you'd normally expect the French sides to kind of maybe roll over at that point.
Yeah.
Certainly like a team that's in the tournament for the first time.
Yeah. I feel like, oh, sorry.
No, you're grand.
Sorry.
I mean, it's a real resilience for kind of a naive side in Europe. But yeah, Taji's fucking massive. He's a huge man.
I think Munster should get Taji. You can take Malherba and he can scrummage and he can do whatever. We'll take Taji, and Connacht can get, I don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's been a big conversation this week about who gets who. They can get like Tom Clarkson or something.
We'll give them the Ray brothers, and then we could take Mac Hansen. That one.
Jesus, lads, you sound like you're playing a card trading game here. These are people's lives, damn it. The only people who can give and take players like they want to.
We're not reading the stats at all. We're swapping the 90 guy for the 70 guy.
But yeah, I mean, it's. I know there was a rake of specifically forwards. I mean, Munster's injury list at the moment is heartbreaking. Even
I think we sacrificed someone. We didn't know, but we sacrificed someone to win that URC, like an actual human, because you can't have that many injuries. Like, it's literally at the moment Dave Kilcoyne, Niall Scannell, Roman Salanoa, so that's a full front row.
Yep. John
Klein, Edwin Adogbo, R.K. Sneeman, Peter O'Mahony's out for another week or two anyway. Jack Daly's out long term. There's definitely another. I feel like there's another back row.
Yeah, you're close enough to an injured 15 just from Munster alone, which is frankly terrifying. But I mean, it is kind of the way rugby is headed, unfortunately, as well. But
everyone gets injuries. That's what they say on provincial state of mind. Like, everyone has injuries.
Yeah. This is what happens. But to go an hour scoring 3 points the last 60 minutes of the game, that's That's what kills you.
Mhm.
You know, Beyond were impressive. They were good value for the comeback, but it's not scoring for an hour that kills you.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder, you know, you are going to have occasions when you're going to be down players. And last season was amazing for Munster. Absolutely brilliant. You know, everything clicked, and this fantastic running rugby, looking for space, looking for soft shoulders, offloading game going, everything. Everyone's done the analysis on that now. They know to expect it. So you have to have some, and especially if you have a couple of injuries to key players, you have to have something you can switch that up with. And I don't know if that's the case. And there is issues as well with the set piece work. The line out, the maul defense is another issue as well. So there are issues there that need to be kind of grabbed hold of. And you kind of wonder how to approach it, how to solve it, like with the kind of the injury list you have.
It's mid-season. There's no
Yeah.
the best thing that happened to Munster last year was they had a full November where Mike Prendergast ran that team. Not ran them in terms of just doing laps. He ran so many reps into that team, and they came out in the 2 games after and looked like an entirely different side.
Yeah.
They don't have that. And I think that's kind of where some of it is showing, because they had to bring back in players from the World Cup, and there's definitely been a few instances of World Cup hangovers. There's been injuries. Like, you look at from a training perspective, the backline and the set piece forwards that Munster are training against is not at the same standard it was at last year. And that
No.
does have a knock-on effect. Like when you go from having Snyman drilling against Wycherley to Finian Wycherley drilling against Evan O'Connell, no disrespect to those two players, but it does have a knock-on effect.
Of course.
And it is Munster are a team, because of the way that they play, training reps are really important, probably more so than any of the other Irish provinces, I think you could say, because of how they play. And it is starting to show now. And I think even in getting the likes of Mike Haley's back training, Peter O'Mahony's doing light training, if they could get, Joey Carberry back, John Klein hopefully be back in January, but it's very vague, so it's not sure. Hopefully get Edwin Adogbo and Roman Salanoa, Oddie Jaeger up to full fitness. And then training might just improve a little bit as well. And the set piece, and maybe from a leadership standpoint, they'll notice more things. And it's always a trickle down effect in rugby. Like every team has seen it. It always just starts with one thing and becomes 5, and then you have to reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
And listen, I've full faith in this coaching group, no doubt about it. Like
Oh Jesus,
they deserve
Yeah.
that. They've earned that, but it
It's
does
kind
take
of-
time, and it's the wrong part of the season as well.
That's it. I think it's
Because
kind
you
of
have to, it is IRFU policy that you're supposed to be chopping and changing this time of year and giving rests.
it's kind of them's the breaks, and the World Cup hangover thing is definitely real. We've seen it across all 4 provinces.
I think we got caught up in
the French teams.
Like we got so caught up in how well Ireland did relatively at the World Cup, and how well the provinces did last year, where we were guaranteed. Well, we weren't guaranteed it, but we had 3 out of 3 teams in the semi-finals. Considering there was an inter-pro quota, that we kind of forgot that Irish teams have a tendency to struggle in World Cup years, and maybe there's just a little bit of that you can't put your finger on. Doesn't mean none of these teams will not win at them. I'm not going to say that like was said last year, but sometimes it is just things like that they're just, you can't account for. You really can't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend too much time at Munster because this wasn't their bigger the 2 games. So Adam, like Connacht were more or less the same on the opening night of the tournament. Talk about a rabbit caught in headlights. Like, I think they expected the old Bordeaux to turn up. Instead, it is Damien Penaud with a bottle of wine in one hand, a cigarette in the other, saying "fucking jouet, lads." And the Connacht were ravaged. It was phenomenal for Bordeaux, but for Connacht, you can't concede 4 to 5 points at home.
No, I don't think you can at all. I don't think any of the provinces could afford to do that, especially in the Champions Cup. It was an insane score. Penaud just does what Penaud wants at the minute. He's relatively untouchable. He's almost sort of like at the minute like what Cheslin Colby was in 2019. Absolutely unstoppable. He's doing everything right.
He's about
You've got
half the
Jal.
player of Henry Arundel in terms of the hype on the Telegraph, which is really, really good.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Like, if a player got a quarter of the hype, then it'd be on the level. But no, you have a team with like, not to like disrespect Connacht, but you're playing a team with the two reserve scrum half and fly half for France.
Yeah.
They, you have two proven players with Peno. Their full back line was incredible. Just cutting through everything really. I feel like Bundy was a massive loss. Would he have changed much in it? He might have shown more leadership, sort of in keeping the head on everyone. I know Bundy was playing. Oh, this is what I showed.
Yeah.
This is what I show, but this is the first podcast. I'm just gonna but like I feel like yeah, they were just cut to pieces. I couldn't believe it when I saw the score myself. Especially on going out west of Ireland, you would expect French teams to struggle. Every team struggles. Almost it's like Connacht's playing. Connacht's like 16th man is the wind. Like any type of weather forecast that comes to them, even if it's dry, I feel like French teams can never handle that. Ulster can never handle it. We always sort of struggled with it. It's just big sort of issues. In terms of even set piece as well, I feel like the three provinces that lost that week showed a massive issue in set pieces. And is that a World Cup hangover? I agree. It possibly is. Is it sort of like, is it players coming in to try and implement what they've learned from the IRFU system and changing it completely to a forward coach who doesn't follow the IRFU system and wants to input their own game into things, maybe confusing things?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a head scratcher.
It's and it just the bottom line for that kind of performance was it just wasn't good enough. I think
No.
even and most pundits, not the most pundits watch Connacht, even if they say they do. Most pundits who talked about this game and compared it to the Saracens game was kind of like, well, they actually played for 80 minutes against Saracens. They just got outgunned in not even a gunslinger game, but essentially an 80-minute sevens game. It kind of developed into. But the first game, they just went into their shells, and that never happens in Go either. Like, that's the thing; it never happens to them. The heads dropped, and like, I don't want to be too critical of a Connacht side that I'm, you know, I think they certainly punch above their weight, but they do have a tendency every season where they just have 2 or 3 games where you're just wondering what's going on in the top 6 inches. Like we've seen it against, was it Edinburgh 2 or 3 years ago? We've seen it once or twice last year as well. It's like you just can't afford that if you're going to be a consistent team. And I do think that iron it out, but again, Keen, like you do have to question things a small bit. Like, yeah, it's grand that Pete Wilkins brushes aside questions about mentality, but he's not going to say, "Oh yeah, mentally we weren't there and Bordeaux were shit." Like,
No, yeah, it's McFarlane's job.
Yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah.
from the top rope.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
But
look, I mean, yeah, they're not going to get thrown under the bus by the coach in that way. But you do have to question it. Like it's such a consistent theme with Connacht over so many years now, across coaches, across playing groups, that it gets to a stage where really the one year you weren't able to throw that question at them at all was the year they won the Pro 14.
yeah.
And to a slight degree last year, I think last year it was better, but they did have performances like the Benetton game away, where you're just thinking, lads, there's a home final up for grabs,
Yep.
and you've just coughed it away against Newcastle and Benetton. Like that's where you do question things.
I feel like they're sort of like, sorry to put this again, but in my experience of watching Ulster in that sort of weird 2013, 2014 Ulster where they have the players, they have a good quality players, but they have maybe 2 or 3 wins in a year that is like quality, and that's what they should be playing. But then they lose to the likes of Zebra. I don't know if it's a complete mentality thing or if it's a new coaching thing. But like for me, I feel like Connacht, it almost should be what they look back on at the end of the season and think, it's either worked well for their season because it's a springboard into what they can do differently. And I feel like when we talk about round 2, they certainly did something different there. They still conceded the points and there still was issues in defense, but they still scored points. It's just interesting, and I don't really want to hinder on it at all because of this week. I don't want any of the comments to fall back on me at all. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Would not be surprised if we see Connacht go up and get a bonus point in Belfast in like a
Don't say that.
30-20 game. Like it could easily. I'm
Oh,
not
it
being.
could happen. It could
I'm not
happen.
even winding you up. Like it could happen because
No,
Connacht
it
are that
could.
kind of
It
side,
could.
and so are Ulster.
Yeah.
One last point, go on.
Yeah, no, we're two similar teams, and I know we have a World Cup winner, but I don't think that changes the fact that overall, an overall team, from one World Cup winner, I just don't know.
Well, Connacht have 2 of the top 5 best 12s in the world in 2023 according to Opta.
Yeah.
So like no excuses, lads. Carl Ford is better than he's better than Robbie Henshaw, he's better than any English 12, any Welsh
Stuart
12.
McCluskey, apparently.
Yeah, and like Stuart had a fantastic year. But I suppose when you only play 9-man rugby, it's kind of hard for 12 to stand out. We'll move back to Munster, coincidentally, just because I think it is the big result of last weekend. I think it's fair to say, like, there is no reality. It doesn't matter if it's Munster or if you're watching a J1C side in which you can excuse scuppering a 14-point lead. Yes, it was away to Exeter. Yes, Exeter got very, very lucky. They certainly got the bounce of the ball, quite literally. But Keane, if we're going to slate Connacht for conceding 40, you have to give out about Munster being 5-0 on the points table and losing out 5-1.
Yeah, it's a hard one to nail down. This it really is. It was like 3 different games.
Oh yeah.
It was calling it a roller coaster would be doing it a disservice. Again, another really strong start. Another couple of really good tries. Nash, Ahern. By the way, I love Ahern. He's just brilliant. Like Ahern at 6 is just.
I don't want to be that person because don't even mean this is hype. This is just one of those comments for the armchair fan. He's one of those players that makes rugby more fun.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look like he should do the things he does. And Ryan Baird has a bit of that. Granted, Baird is a bit of a different build, but it just makes rugby look more fun when you've got guys like that. He was walking in that try from midfield. He wasn't sprinting, he was walking.
Yeah.
Now, it was only about 3 strides, but I
love those tall 6 kind of gangly, loping runs. That's just one of my favorite things in rugby. It's just brilliant. It's like watching a giraffe trying to learn how to gallop. So it all started off beautifully. And then it was the last 20 minutes. Exeter's bench had an impact.
25 minutes, I think they brought on their new front row or something like that. 25 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And Munster had only Ollie Jaeger on. And to be fair, that first scrum with Ollie Jaeger on, you could rest a point on his back, someone said on Twitter. It was so straight. But after that, it didn't go as well. And I think I know what point you're going to make. Again, when the pack makes a difference in the last 20 minutes, that's where it came up costly.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what it is. It's like, again, you're missing some forwards, but like the pack issues, the scrum doesn't matter till it does, to quote the lads again.
Can you send that into a certain rugby group, Keane? Because when I say it, I get fucking shot down, but like, it's true.
Yeah, no, but it is true. But I mean, you could say that of pretty much any set piece. It's just most of them are kind of directly like that. The line out is directly linked to the scrum, is directly linked to the maul. But yeah, the scrum. It's an odd one because it has been depowered, but yet it seems to be coming back in to importance again without really much having changed in terms of the application of the laws. It's a weird one.
maybe this is too much of a theory, but I think the law changes has probably brought back the technical scrummager. There's so
Yeah,
many lads. Like you
Yeah.
look at Oxen J,
yeah,
he's not the
yeah.
biggest prop in the world. He's a big man.
No.
He's not the biggest.
Mhm.
Technically, one of the most gifted scrummagers in the world.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
possibly the broadest prop in the world. He's like
yeah.
he is literally like a barrel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's amazing. I love him to bits, and he's a really cool human being as well, which is nice to boot.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think you're right. I think we are seeing more of those kind of shorter, barrel chested, kind of the traditional prop shape, maybe without quite as big beer belly back in my day.
Bar Big Ben Tamifuna,
Yeah,
who
okay,
has it
you know,
all.
yeah. Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, oh, he has a
Yeah.
proper classic
Oh,
physique. Um,
oh,
but yeah,
he
it is.
even.
It's
Sorry,
no far away.
sorry. I don't know podcast adequate quite yet.
Just fight with
Sorry.
Keane is
Yeah,
always a good
yeah.
rule.
Sorry.
Harley did that before. It was great.
But like to add on to your point about the technical prop, like Scott Wilson bursting through the scenes at Ulster. You kind of see that he's not like the classic sort of prop build. He's quick. He's a quick prop. He's just kind of he's a big sort of barrel. Like as you say, like technical scrummagers is the way to go at the minute. It's not all about power, which is
And
good for an
funnily
Ulster
enough,
fan.
he was getting lessons. He was getting life lessons in AIL by all accounts. And
Yeah.
like you do look at that Munster front row, like they should have been the ones turning the screw on a young extra front row. Like Jeremy Luckman's internationally capped. Ollie Yeager, I'd nearly put money on it. Ollie Yeager will probably be in the Six Nations squad. There's no way the RFU try and bring him back and he's not in the Six Nations squad. Like these
Yeah.
lads should be the ones who are like, right, we're going to teach these lads a lesson. And it's not about like the passion or the bastardry about it. It's just, it's true. It's like, how often did you go over to France and some 37-year-old tight head from Cast who you never heard of decides this is the day I'm going to teach this young Irish lad with freckles a lesson?
Oh, normally a Georgian. Normally a Georgian that would
Yeah, true,
terrorize. You
actually.
know what I mean? Like we had a Georgian in Ulster a couple of years ago, and his first interview was just like, I just can't wait to scrum. He never played. He never played for us, but like he was just like, I just can't wait to scrum. I can't wait to go to the scrummaging machine. I think his only English words he knew was I can't wait to. I love it. Scrum. Like
Is that well? I would say is that enough Munster talk? There's never enough Munster talk, but
No,
I will have a Red Army podcast coming this week where we will talk about that extra game in depth. I don't want to talk about it in depth, but you have to take the good with the bad, don't you?
but we're just gonna have to say one more thing before you go off this, and that was the was there a bit of controversy over the Conor Murray pass?
Oh, I thought you were going to go
very
about
end.
an entirely different
I thought as
controversial
well.
thing.
I thought it was.
No,
He
no,
was
no.
offside. If you drew the lines, he was offside. But it's one of those. If you're asking for it, you shouldn't be in that position. But
Yeah,
I do think Connor was right to go for it. But as Connor will
but
tell you himself, he's done it his whole career.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you fuck it up, it's on you.
Well, that's
Yeah.
it. Like, if I mean, absolutely, he was within his rights to buy the offside penalty from there, and if it had come off, yeah, could have been genius.
And have you
But
seen Jack Crowley kicking for touch? Like he gets every
Yeah.
last inch of it.
Yeah.
So like there's a good chance. Now line out had gone to pot and Jeremy Barron was legged at the end, but you don't know, you don't want to be in a position though where you are asking the referee. And I know people said, oh, Tyke Byrne was whinging, but like, be fair, the referee never once asked, is the players who are slowly jogging back actually in the way? So like, it was a fair question in that instance. But
yeah.
and we should take a minute. Wow, how good was Jack Crowley at the weekend? Like, yes, Munster lost, but it's one of those. If he got man the match in a losing team, you'd probably forgive it. He was
No,
phenomenal.
right. Yeah,
He was
look,
incredible.
I've been a huge fan of his since the under-20s. Is the first time I came across him, and just he's an incredible player. He really is. I have no issues with him being number one for Ireland.
Yeah.
Six
Well,
Nations.
you've complimented Scrums and you complimented Jack Crowley. We know that you were not writing Matt Williams articles for the Irish Times, that's for sure. We'll go back to we'll go back to another defeat. Again, another high scoring defeat. Connacht, as we said. I should say like we've talked about Jack Crowley and tens. Owen Farrell was phenomenal for Saracens at the weekend.
Oh yeah,
Like
he was.
55-36 win. And I wrote down a PA noisy StoneX Stadium because there's no fans in there. It's literally just all pumped in. Like there was only like 9,000 people there. Like as Hugh Griffin made the point on Twitter, like one of the biggest cities in the world, a huge rugby appetite, loads of success. It defies logic how they don't get a good crowd, but that's for another day's conversation. Connacht, like defensively again, Adam, like just not enough. Like it's 4 losses in a row.
Yeah.
Yes, that is Bulls, Leinster, Bordeaux, Saracens, 4
Yeah.
potential European contenders. But
Yeah,
55 points, you just can't move past it.
you can't. I think that you could put a positive in that they did score 36 against Saracens away. I think that's a massive positive. I feel like there's a big that is the big positive from the game. And if you're a Saracens fan, all 3 of them, looking at that,
It was 2 at the start of this podcast.
Two.
Inflation is kicking in here.
Well, yeah, you said the PA system, the PA guy, I forgot the count. But he's getting paid to be a Saracens fan. But I would say that if you were a Saracens fan, you'd be positive of the fact that you put 55 points on Connacht, but I'd say you'd be more annoyed, if anything. If you were like the Connacht fans seems quite happy. They seemed quite happy scoring 36 points against Connacht. It was sort of that attitude of, did we really expect anything else?
Yeah. That was the messages I was getting off Connacht friends, was kind of like,
yeah,
we were expecting to lose and for Saracens to get a bonus point, but we did come over here and we'd not leave an empty-handed and not entirely tails between the legs. Like they went over with no Mac Hansen, and Bundy played his best game for Connacht in a while.
oh, yeah.
Like there's that kind of thing to it as well.
I think Bundy getting right into form, showing like how he can play, like showing what he did against like in the World Cup for Ireland, him setting into that form again, and Mac coming back this week. Connacht are they starting to click again? Possibly. I feel like they need sort of time to sort of iron out the creases and iron out sort of the sort of set piece issues that they would have. I do love the fact that Saracen's social media posted like well done to Connacht, and it was just all photos of Bundy with all the Saracen players.
It was like all of Lions. Like it's so cliched in its own way, but then at the same time it's kind of like, I mean, I get it. Like, do you know what I mean?
do get
Bundy
it.
sells.
He does, but it almost is just like, oh, I feel like there's so much talent in that Connacht team. There's so much talent in that Connacht team, and they did show it on the score sheet, but it's just their defense. If they sort out the defense, they've got the finishes now. When Santi comes, is that gonna change?
Yeah.
Is that gonna change things? You know what I mean?
Not Santa Claus, folks. Santi Cordero.
I was going to say, what, in 5 days?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
They've been milking that, in fairness, as well on the social media. But anyway.
Well,
not the worst social media post of the week. Anyways, Adam, you were saying.
I did mention it.
Well, to be fair, they're getting more social media campaigning out of Santi than we did with Kitchoff in a week. But like, do they need a wise head like Santi to come in with his experience? Like, I had a lot of conversation with Connacht fans this week about sort of well, I'm sure we'll get onto it at some stage, about World Cup winners coming over to Ireland, and they want a big sort of figure, a big sort of leader to come into their squad. And they're looking like they might need it sort of in the forward pack, possibly, to sort of, because I think their backs are grand. Relatively enough, their backs are they're okay. They are, well, yeah, they're all right. I can't say anything. I can't say anything bad about Connacht because it will bite me on the arse.
Okay, I'll say it so. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say something nice first.
Compliment sandwich.
Yeah, well, it might be an open compliment sandwich. The first half, Connacht did really well. It was 21-17 at half time, and they were good for it. Like, it wasn't fluky, just about hanging on. Like it was actually a pretty decent match. Like I was switching between that one and Stormers La Rochelle.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. You Leinster
Um,
fans are obsessed with La Rochelle, huh? Isn't that it?
I'm a Stormers supporter.
Oh yeah,
no, I
sorry.
think
So
I'm
I'll
obsessed.
go get my polo. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm obsessed with Stormers. They're like our version of La Rochelle, but in the RC.
Okay.
Two
But
semi-finals, two
yeah,
last minute.
yeah. So yeah, Connacht did fairly well in that first half. They really were. They put in the fight, but they just seemed to have issues with kind of connectivity and decision making in defense. And it's not just the forwards. And they've got some, they've got great players across. They just seem to be missing at times that kind of close knit, cooperative understanding that you need to make a defensive system really sing.
It's the old thing. If you're thinking, you're losing when you're defending.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
that you
yeah,
train till you do it.
yeah,
It's that you train till you can't not do
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they just at times, even when they kind of had that hard fought matches down South Africa, there were some absolute brain farts. And you're just like, that shouldn't be happening. It really shouldn't. You should be better drilled than that, lads. Or
Yeah.
you need to be more switched on than that. I don't know why, particularly. Um,
I even think Bundy's a bit hot-headed sometimes as well when it comes to yellow cards and red cards.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, well, no, do you know what I mean? Like, is that like sort of like a Connacht? Is that a Connacht issue that's trickling through that sort of
Yeah.
system? Because
He's probably not the right man to be an enforcer, and I don't mean that in
yeah,
disrespectfully, but like the fact that Gary Ringrose is the bolter our defense for Ireland means that
yeah,
that Bundy is just a normal defender. Whereas for Connacht, he's the one who's laying down a marker and he
yeah,
has a tendency to go high. Now we didn't see it and we haven't seen it this season. We haven't seen
no,
it for a while.
no,
We should stress
yeah,
that.
yeah,
no,
yeah,
But
no,
that
no.
that is tied into the point that like who's your defensive captains? Like against Bordeaux, they called for the 13. Like there's better games to give a lad his first pro game at 13 than against
yeah,
that Bordeaux side.
yeah. That's
Will we
true.
move on to Leinster? We can do Ulster first if you want, but like I have Leinster next on the running order. Can't have them
Oh,
come at fourth. Jesus.
I'm more
Also,
settled at fourth.
yeah, they also had a try. Well, not also because there's been no try bonus points yet covered, but they had a try bonus point win against. It was a heavily rotated sale, but it is fair to say they punched above their weight as well. But they obviously faded away. Keen. It was one of those games that if you weren't watching and you for some reason tuned into Cardiff against Bath, you'd have thought Leinster are playing rubbish. They weren't that bad, but again, it ties into the point we made earlier. A lot of Leinster's mistakes are so obvious that it makes them probably look worse than they have been. Like you could spot a knock on from a million miles away.
Yeah.
Not everyone will spot a system error.
Yeah. No, it's again, it's that 1% at the end of a pass or well, the aim of the pass or the run onto it. It's just the little mismatches in timing, which will probably hopefully come. But yeah, Sale were really good value for this match. Like they were leading 13-6 and they like they'd been two to look, Leinster had a couple of opportunities that didn't come through. But yeah, Sale were really like I thought that was a beautiful try from them in the first half. It was Conor Doherty finished it, but Rafi Quirk, lovely little side of his boot, put it through. Like that's a through ball you'd be happy to see in the Premier League. It was absolutely on the button.
While
And
we're on the topic of the Premier, that Hugo Keenan stopping to charge your man, that was a dive that would be happy in the Premier League as well. Like I tweeted it, I got no responses, no biting, but like I literally seen two dives at the weekend and they were both English wingers. You like it's almost like, well, why wouldn't it be? It's like the soccer. Of course, it's an English winger who dives, but that's tangential, of course.
Yeah. No, back to one of your points from earlier, I had written off the Sharks as well to some extent, like 12 substitutions, you'd be hard to say, yeah, it's a heavily rotated team. They're just throwing it, but absolutely not the case. And actually, while I'm on it, the English sides have been really quite good. Like
Yeah.
we've talked through a couple of them now. We've not actually mentioned they're playing quite well. And when you think about it for a second, like you've got several teams have gone under, unfortunately, but you've got the best players from them have been redistributed amongst the teams essentially that are
Yeah.
there. So of course they're getting better, but also like their focus I think has been a little bit sharpened by all of this and opportunity to win any kind of a
There's a
sub
bit of a
where
point to
maybe Europe matters
prove.
more now. Yeah.
Like you look at Northampton, for instance, Northampton so often just lie down and take their beating in Europe, but
Ah,
like
yeah.
how they bet Toulon at the weekend at home was a team was like, right, we're going to have a cut at this. And I think I hate to say it, like, but it's such a low hanging fruit. It just proves that relegation does prove a difference because they've gone to a non-relegation league and they are. I think the coaches are starting to realize, listen, like it's top four in the Premiership, or if we're fighting for mid-table, why wouldn't we give Europe a crack?
Yeah,
Do you
because
know,
Yeah.
like
why
that's
not?
where
Like,
I'd actually be more disappointed in Bristol than anyone else because they're a mid-table Premiership club and they rotated before they played Bordeaux away. And it's like
yeah,
that's kind of the game you target and just be like, right, unless you're making top four, just scratch it. Let's have a
Yeah.
crack at a team.
Bristol got their own problems, man.
Oh yeah, I know that. Everyone does. Like, give me one English team who doesn't have their own problems. Like
I
um,
I think
Bedford
Sale,
Blues,
to be
maybe.
honest, I no, but to be fair, Sale. I went down to the AJ Bell last season. I won't talk about the game that I went to. There was a flight
It didn't
issue.
happen. It's fine.
No,
It
it
didn't
didn't
happen.
happen. It was my English girlfriend's first game, Ulster game. I brought her to, and
Never going back.
yeah. I was like, trust me, we're all right. We're okay. We won't get beat like this. But I think Sale is one of those teams that everybody has to sort of like. I know it might be their second team, but they've got a good system up there. Their
yeah,
stadium isn't
yeah,
great, but their attendance isn't great either. It's just it was one of those weird things. I think English rugby in terms of supporters isn't quite up there with the standard that they're playing at the minute. And I don't know what the issue is there, but I think when we think of the English teams gone by, and sort of the Leinster, French, even like the Irish province dominance over the last 16 quarterfinals, etc. Say the team like Sale coming through, they've had Faf de Klerk, they've had a couple of really good South Africans come through, and now they're just now that at the minute they've still got South Africans, but they're relatively more unknown names, and they're doing really good. They're doing brilliant, and I feel like everybody sort of needs to at the minute look up to Sale and think they are. You get your money's worth of Sale, even if they do bring down a weaker team. I feel like they're really well coached, like really well coached,
yeah.
and just a good setup. It's just a really good setup, and it's really annoying because when I went down to the AJ Bell Stadium, have you ever been?
No, I've
No,
driven past it on the motorway. That's the most.
yeah, it's sort of like it's not even in Manchester. It's like outside of everything, and it's just kind of plonked there. It's a stadium plonked in the middle of the field, and it's so confusing to me. And I think no wonder they don't have the fan base that they could do, because it's really good rugby every week, and they just don't have the fans to back it up. And I feel like that's why we always sort of downplay the English teams, especially like Sale.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100% agree with that. Like, I was
yeah,
really impressed with
yeah,
how well drilled they were.
yeah.
Like, you might not have had superstars in that kind of highly
Mhm.
rotated side, but they were all really well connected. They were up fast and getting the hits in. They were hitting their rucks. And yeah, a couple of moments of some really, really good play from them as well. And yeah, then at the very end, absolutely took advantage against 13, which teams don't
Mhm.
always do. And it was quick hands across the back in their own 22, and then the speed at which that break
Yeah.
happened on the outside. Um, like that was seriously impressive from them.
They've got such a good setup in Sale where because I went to university in the northwest of England, I would have seen Manchester Metropolitan, their first team is sort of like an academy system. for Sale Sharks. It's almost like Northumbria being for Newcastle, but it seems that the man met system's working pretty well. When you go and play man met, they all have this man met like crest and the Sale Sharks crest on the other, and they all play the same rugby. It's almost like they're playing what the IRFU do with the provinces, similar tactics, and if it works well, it works well. I feel like their system works so well, and they're finding really good talent from this university as well. If you have this man met, like I don't know how many thousands would enroll in man met, but if you have really good players from there, they're just going to pick one by one, and they will find players that are rapid, that are really quick, and that could be well drilled, because even their seconds team had a coach, and their coach was a South African fella. And I remember turning around to lads and going, lads, we're taking our own warm-up. They've got a South African lad like helping out with their team, traveling with their team. They've got a coach, like we were just like, oh, I was standing on the lineouts because I had to retire due to head injuries at the ripe old age of 21. So I was doing lineout refs, sort of helping with the back line, going, but yeah, they just have such a well-run system that's just so confusing because nobody ever hears about it.
Absolutely. No one
Yeah.
ever hears about it again. You could talk about like the fan view point aside, point of it all. Don't have a whole lot of them. But to be fair, like what a performance, and the buy-in was incredible in the team on the night. Like Tommy Taylor, the hooker, supposedly looked at Bernard Jackman and said, something along the lines of write us off now when they went into the sheds in the lead at halftime. So fair play to them in that regard. Like so many teams just roll over, take their beating in Europe, and you have to give credit where it's due as well. Another side you could possibly say that about the first part about taking their beating was Racing. Very disappointing performance. Ulster got their bounce back win. There's no doubt about that. But for a Racing side who looked so good in the top 14, lost to Quids at home, lost Ulster away. Really, really weird performance. I'll start with yourself, Adam. I'll go to you in a minute, Keane. Big bounce back win for Ulster. But there, you do have the question marks because of the fact that Racing didn't look like Racing.
I think Khaleesi was like a ghost in that game. He came off after like 50 minutes, and I was just like, when he came off, I was just like, did he make as much as an impact? Our team was the strongest it could be, bearing in mind that I think it was Matty Ray that started 8, and he's not our strongest 8. It was his first time playing 8, and he was bouncing some of the lads in the Racing pack like they were, like it was in the AIL or a lower league URC, like a lower team in the URC. It's really interesting because you'd think that Stuart Lancaster would sort of know our game plan in and out when he was with Leinster, and he's now got a team that should perform but don't. They had a big pack, they had flashy backs, but I feel like with Racing in the last couple of years, it's just been the same old story. To put it into words, I remember seeing Racing a couple of years ago when they had Russell and Zebo, and it was sort of the same story. Big names, flashy team. Does the team quite click? Is there an issue there? Is there an issue sort of with language, possibly? Khaleesi has only been in France for a few weeks now. Has he? Well, he's been in the country about 3 months now. Think about it with the World Cup, but has he learned enough about the culture of it? Arndl even, he looks lost as well. It's sort of like a weird mix match of players to go into it. I feel like as an Ulster standpoint, our backs looked as good as we did in COVID, when sort of we had an empty stadium, but our backs were playing like they basically were told you could do what you want and play fast flowing rugby. I think it's as good as James Hume's performance that I've seen for a while, since certainly before the R1&2 set up that tour last year. I think that's as good as we've seen James Hume have playing in a while. Balakoon even got lots of ball. Stuart McCluskey got lots of ball. Mike Laurie in broken play. Does that mean that we're on an upwards trajectory? don't know, because when French teams come to Belfast, we always go, oh, it's too cold, or the weather's going to completely knock them for six or something like that. But it just seemed odd. This Racing team looked quiet and almost lost, and they didn't really bully us, which I expected to. I expect more of a bullying out of Connacht on the weekend than I did Racing this week. It was bizarre.
It was a very strange game, and
Yeah.
like Cian, we could focus on Racing and talk about how poor they were all day, but like Ulster do deserve their credit. At the same time, got the job done pretty efficiently, like really fast start. Knew exactly what they were going to do in terms of maul and set piece, but the one thing that struck me was I don't think I've seen an Ulster team play with that much freedom in a big game in a long time.
Yeah, they looked happy to be playing
That's
If
rugby.
there's
what I
ever
wanted.
an indictment of a coach, it's that we're sitting here being like, just didn't the
But
players
you
look
know
happy
what?
for a change?
You know what though? Like,
It's not wrong.
yeah,
Mhm.
but also McFarlane put in place. I think the lab session paid huge dividends for them ahead of that game.
Yeah.
I'm really predictable. Those tap tries were
Oh.
all I could think about. I went to sleep that night dreaming about them. They were wonderful, and setting them
sorry.
up for the maul, the standing maul, from the tap, or the tap directly into a running. Like, they're simple enough, but wonderfully executed, and they worked, and everyone seems like really happy. um, it's a wonderful thing. So
I think. Oh, sorry.
no. So I'm wondering, do you think we'll see more of that of them?
Yes, I think the big difference was Cooney was starting. Cooney was starting. I think Nathan, as I said before in round one, I think he's a very good 9 at doing the basics right, but he's like a yard pace slower, and I think that just comes with experience. I think Cooney getting on that pitch, because he was on the bench for the last couple of weeks and we lost all those weeks. Cooney coming on, speeding up the ball, we play off 9. I feel like I think I read that Henderson brought in the tap idea. And when you have your first two attachers being O'Toole and Kitsoff, like to have that first push being those two and off Henderson, I feel like it's relatively unstoppable, even if you are a team like Racing, as it's shown. We have both of our front rowers, O'Toole and Kitsoff, played 77 minutes in the game, and Tom O'Toole didn't even look tired at the end of it. Kitsoff did relatively look tired, but what can you do? You know what I mean? Like, they both played unbelievably, and I feel like, as you said, they looked happy. I feel like they've trained that week. Dan McFarlane coming out and saying that, oh, they just don't train, and sort of my whole Twitter meltdown of where's the coaches? Why is the CEO not tweeting anymore? There still is that, don't get me wrong. And I'm sure if you ask me this time next week, I will still be skeptical, whatever the result is. There's something there. I feel like the happiness and the creativity go hand in hand. And I do feel like it's John Cooney. And with Billy Burns being injured this week, I can't wait to see a partnership of Cooney and Flannery again, because I feel like that's going to be
There'll
really
definitely be
creative.
more attacking impetus, won't there, with
Oh yeah.
those two.
Oh yeah. Because I think the last time that they played together, we won against the Sharks in Durban last year.
Jesus.
Yeah. We you know what I mean? And that was Flannery's like third game for us. Or third game that season. He hardly played. And now he's playing more and more. I feel like we need to settle him in more and let this big interpro with Billy Burns injured. We want to see a more attacking 10. In my opinion, we needed more attacking 10.
Well, your opinion, Ulster fans all over the place. My opinion, Keane's opinion, but not Dan McFarlane's, apparently.
No.
And if there's ever an indictment that the players are good enough, it's the fact that Dwayne Peel has got to the Scarlets, who don't have a squad as good as Ulster's, and they're really struggling. But look at how good he made that Ulster squad. Like, he's not a
Yeah.
bad coach. Do you know what I mean? Like, the
Jar-
players are there.
Jared Payne is also in that Scarlet setup as well,
He is as an
which
attack
it
coach, which I found weird.
yeah, which like is to me is I only got reminded of it the other week, is went sort of under the radar that he's went there. But I would honestly I would take Leinster's checkbook and write a million zeros to get them back for us. I feel like we took a step backwards in the coaching setup that we have. If we were to talk about Ulster in a broader experience setup, getting back Johnny Bell after 10 years where it didn't work and he went to Gloucester, didn't work. Then he came back as sort of mates rates. Soper with sort of the skills coach was very good, but having him push into assistant coach, his sort of past experience was head coach at Banbridge, and he was also at Inst. He was a teacher at Inst, and he went right into the Ulster setup, replacing Payne basically. I just think it's very interesting how everything's set up at Ulster at the minute. And that's why I was really happy with the win.
Interesting.
Well, no,
You've got to do the air quotes around that.
yeah. It's interesting, but it is just like giving jobs to the lads almost. It really is. It was like Ulster 10 years ago when we had like a coaching setup of like Neil Doak. You know, we had like loads of former players, and it just didn't work. And we're sort of going back to that now, and it's not working still.
I mean, if a former coach and former player of Mark McCall was to be appointed as Dan McFarlane's successor, I don't think we'd be talking about the jobs for the boys situation. But it is certainly prevalent as well.
I how do you know what's on my Christmas list? That will never happen. I think that was just a bit before my time. I was born in 2002, so I missed the glory years. I was 3 when we last won a trophy. So I was
Poor
there.
Cian is just feeling very young right now.
Sorry. I was like 10 and I was at the 2012 final against Leinster. It was the first time I watched Ulster v Leinster. I saw us play Munster. I saw us play Edinburgh. I thought we were class. And then it ruined my childhood. So there you go, Cian.
Yeah, rugby's been ruining childhoods for a lot longer than that.
Yeah. But I
Cian
feel
is
like
ready to just go, let me tell you about the 90s as a rugby fan.
Oh Jesus, no, I'm not. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to talk about it. It's only been 30 years.
I do feel like there's it's an institution. Ulster Rugby have this weird for the boys mentality that's still there that I thought was going to go with Shane Logan leaving, but it's just kind of stayed there with Petrie. It's gotten worse, I feel like, with Petrie, but
I mean, ex-players per se is not a bad thing in and of itself, but if it's the only thing, then that makes it bad.
I do think that with McFarlane's case is that we have a lot of players like Sean Reedy at the very start of the season. Was it the start of the season or the end of last season? Was sort of like as like a hidden journalist was kind of sort of speaking about him sort of alienating players out if they don't agree with him. And that was what I was kind of worried about with John Cooney being on the bench. He would sort of pick on players like
he'd turn to his LinkedIn page and write a 10,000 word piece about Ulster.
Well, yeah, it was like there was like a sort of murmurings among the Ulster community that I don't think the players are quite happy still with McFarlane, and I feel like McFarlane giving them this sort of creative kick. We'll see on Friday, if we're going to go back to square one again. But I feel like McFarlane needs to give more of the creative kick that we had at the very start of COVID, when Hume was on fire, Moore broke out that season. Laurie broke out that season. That was the first real Mike Laurie season. But I feel like we need a more attacking 10 and a couple of more South Africans. Which is, I mean, just
why not? You know, a couple more World Cup winners never did anyone any harm
in there. We don't have enough money for it because of everything that happened last season with frozen pitchgate and things like that.
Oh yeah, that's the only reason. That's the
only
reason.
It's that. It's I feel like yeah, because trust me, if Henderson didn't get that central contract, we'd be bankrupt. We would be bankrupt, and
Yeah,
he'd probably be off in France somewhere.
yeah. I mean, maybe you'd be better off. Playing for Ulster is very, very stressful. Um,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that. Just before we leave it tonight, lads, I just want to have a quick look ahead to the next 4 to 6 weeks. Always a pivotal point in the season. I know Interpros, if you come away with 1 out of 2 wins, it's decent going. But Keane, firstly, Leinster have Munster away on Stevens's Day, Ulster home on New Year's Day. They've got a break, then it's Stade Francais at home and Leicester Tigers away. It's Leinster. They should be targeted 4 wins from that. What's your expectation?
Yeah, I'll rattle through these. Munster waiting on team sheets, but the current rumors are that Leinster will go with a strong selection. With Munster's current injury list, that's not what you want to hear, but it's for Munster. I think it's for morale. It's a must win. At this point.
It always
So
is for Leinster though as well. It should be said. Like for all the talk of the rivalry's dead, it's like, yeah, that's because Leinster players, absolutely feel the need to win this game.
yeah. So there'll be that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it's a must win for both teams all the time anyway. But it's like you've been kicked up a notch here. I think by everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks, which I'm not going to go into any detail about because you're going to say pineapples. So Ulster again, very much depends on selections. I'd say confidence is pretty high after that win against Racing. So take a scalp off Connacht, and they will be itching to keep that streak going. A fresh 2 win streak. So they could well be rolling into Dublin with a bit of form. And if that's the case, it's kind of anyone's bet. If Leinster play a strong team against Munster, they'd probably rotate against Ulster. So you'd never know. That could be the one to watch. If you're an Ulster fan. Stad currently bottom of the Champions Cup group on 1 point. They are done. They're all but sunk at this point. Like even with how easy it is to get out of a group, at this stage they'd be lucky to get Challenge Cup. They're fifth in the top 14 at the moment though. They've got La Rochelle, Toulon, and Clermont right before this fixture, and then they'll play Stormers at home and Bordeaux away after. So they are going to send the Espoir to Dublin. Absolutely nailed on. I can't imagine they're going to give that much of a shake at all. And then Leicester, currently second in the Champions Cup group, just behind Leinster on equal log points. But they have arguably their 2 most difficult fixtures to come yet. They're 7th in the Premiership table. They've got Exeter, who are 6th, Bath, who are 2nd, and Saracens, who are 4th, and then are playing La Rochelle away before they get to us. And they've got Quins the following week, or 3rd in the Premiership. So I kind of think it kind of hinges on the result against La Rochelle to some extent. I think they're in a pretty decent position at the moment in the pool, but yeah, depending on how that goes, they still may well front up even if they don't win that, because they're in a decent enough position to come out of it mid-table at least anyway, even with 3 wins. So that could be a very sticky away game for Leinster, I think.
They're sticky, but not ones you'd think they'd lose. I think that's actually, I said this before, that's probably a good thing for Leinster. Like Burjack will be the same point on RT today. Like if they'd went and beat Sale by 50 points, it'd be no good to them.
Yeah.
They might do that to Stad, don't get me wrong, but like Munster, Ulster, very unlikely, and Leicester away in particular, very unlikely. It's no harm. It really isn't. I'm really
uphill struggle is that's what builds,
yeah, it's what builds character. I'm really struggling to get my words out now. This flu is just taking over because it's nighttime. It's just normal. But I'll touch on Munster before we get to Ulster. Munster have Leinster at home, as we mentioned. They've got Connacht away in the Sports Ground on New Year's Day. They've got Toulon away and Northampton away. Like after the Glasgow game, I was looking at Munster's run of fixtures and thinking we should win every game from here to the Six Nations, or maybe not the Connacht game because you might have to rotate heavily. Now it's like we have to win. We have to win at least on Stevenson's or New Year's Day, and we have to win at least at home to Northampton. It's just like talk about a change in fortune really, really quickly. But as we said, you can't always point and look at injuries because every team has injuries. You have to adapt. You have to improve. You look at how, chances come from nothing. You look at Thomas Ahern at 6. He's been a revelation. You look at John Hodnett's kicked on. Jack Crowley's been brilliant. Yeah, he's played a heap of minutes, but he's been fantastic for us. Sean O'Brien had his best game on the wing so far at the weekend. You do have to take those chances, and like they need to get 2 wins for those games. Like they can't afford to be heading into the Six Nations period again on the outside looking in and put themselves under more pressure with a trip to South Africa to come, which, as we've said before, is kind of tough. Like especially when you have to go to Pretoria. Whatever about the rest of the places, no one wants to go to Pretoria. They don't lose there.
Like, I know you're kings of the hard way, but like
we're taking the fucking piss.
You don't have to do it every single time and then make it harder every single time. Come on.
I know, Keith. It's so like Graham Roundtree said, we're basically number one, he said we're kings the hard way. Not in those exact words. Number two, he said we're basically giving teams early Christmas presents. And both are very, very true. The same could have been said about Ulster last year. We'll discuss them really quickly, Adam. Connacht at home, Leinster away, Toulouse at home, Quins away. What are you expected?
I'm really worried by your lads' use of the word rotate. Because if I was Ulster, I would not rotate for any of these games and just risk it. I feel like we need our strongest team for. I'd say the Ulster Connacht game really hinges our season, more than the Leinster Ulster game, in my opinion. I'm quite worried for last week having both of our front rows playing 77 minutes. Will we see them come off the bench, or will they play a 50-minute game and then that's how they're managed? That's going to be a difficult game. The Leinster Ulster game, that's another difficult game. It's just, I feel like we are coming into the business end of the season for an Ulster fan, because the Toulouse Ulster game at home, we need to win that, because Harlequins away is difficult in itself. Toulouse are on unbelievable form, as they normally are. They're one of the top 4 teams in Europe. They're going for another title. We need to beat them at home. Harlequins at the Stoop, they're on the same amount of points as us at the minute. They would want to be going for something. They have Cardiff the week before, and you would bank on it that Harlequins are gonna beat Cardiff. I feel like they would absolutely try and throw the kitchen sink at us to try and get into a spot above where we are at the minute. Because when you look at Bath's sort of in the same pool, Bath have Racing and Toulouse. So I think Harlequins are looking to leapfrog Bath. I feel like Ulster are looking to leapfrog Bath. I feel like everyone has a difficult game in that pool, to be perfectly honest. And as an Ulster fan that was an optimist a year or two ago, I'm very skeptical about the interprovincial games as well. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. The Ulster Connacht game is really up in the air for me. I do see us winning. I hope by 10 points. The Ulster Leinster game. Oh, it's one of those where I've been to so many Ulster Leinster games at the RDS and I've only seen them win once. So what can you do? I would love it. I would love it if we won. If Leinster were to have a rotated squad and we were to send down a stronger team, I would say that we'd put in a good shift against them. But I feel like we also need to look at sort of the Challenge Cup spots with the next European games. And getting a win at Toulouse would almost definitely sort of solidify that Challenge Cup spot. Because I'd say we'd have a good crack at it. I would hope. And that's my rundown of the next 4 games. I just kind of hope that we get sort of 2 wins out of the 4. 3 wins would be lovely and 4 wins would be unbelievable.
Cian, I'm going to come to you for Connacht. I'm sorry, I didn't get you to prep this. You don't have your usual 75 pages of notes for this question. I think.
Okay.
But they have Ulster away, as we mentioned, Munster at home. Then it's Leon away and Bristol at home. Well, like it's not hard. It's not impossible, but it's not easy.
Uh, it's a tough run. It's a tough run. Bristol might be their best chance. Which is weird to say. Like Lyon are doing all right in the top 14. So Bristol are kind of there and abouts, but not great at the moment. And definitely have their own issues. Probably be nice for them to see Pot again, but other than
And Kieran
that,
Marmion, don't forget Kieran
and
Marmion.
Marms, yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Oh, sorry, no. Of course, the most conduct thing is for Kieran Marmion to score a winning try against them. So yeah, of course, yeah, that's the
God,
most conduct thing.
I didn't know
Yeah.
what it, don't know what Terry would be like that day.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine they are gonna have to try and win one of those games, one of those Interpro games. They may well be targeting the Munster game.
I think they will. I think that's the one
I
you
think they
target, isn't
will
it?
because it's the home game.
They win it quite
All,
regularly. Like,
yeah, I know. Look, yeah, they've got to target one of them. That's the home one.
Yeah.
They're hurting at the moment. The hurt's probably not over yet. I'd say they're not gonna be happy coming away from Ulster, I don't think. So yeah, they're gonna target that Munster game. Sorry.
yeah,
And then Lyon, I think, will probably be a bridge too far from them away from home. Unfortunately, I'd say. But Bristol. Bristol play Bulls at home in the third round.
yeah.
They could well lose that game by more than 7 points. In which case, if Connacht don't take an absolute beating, sorry, if they got 5 points, if they got a bonus point win against Bristol at home, they could get a Challenge Cup spot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
By the way, looking at the table there, which actually wouldn't be a bad return, and I honestly think Challenge Cup, given a good, proper go by Connacht, would actually be really good for them.
I think that's the same with Ulster. I think we saw with Leinster winning the Challenge Cup that sort of started.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
that's no
mean?
harm at
Like,
all. Yeah.
no, it didn't at all. I think that started sort of like I know you've won the Heineken Cup and stuff like that many times before, but I feel like that was sort of a weird stage at Leinster when you just won the Challenge Cup. Like it didn't do you harm. It just you built on from that.
Look, a trophy's a trophy.
Oh yeah,
It's
I'd
nothing to
love a
be sniffed
trophy.
at.
I'd love a trophy.
Even dub caps count. So if there's any clause in Orcus Neyman's contract about winning trophies, dub caps do count. Just saying. And then it's a win-win for absolutely everyone. Gentlemen, we'll leave it at that tonight. It's been a pleasure, as always, having you join me this evening. And as always, thanks to Adam, to Cian, and to everyone for tuning in for this comprehensive look back. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any comments, opinions, questions, podcast ideas, you can tweet us at KLS Rugby. You can comment on our YouTube, find our podcast, KLS Rugby Podcast. We're also on Instagram and on Blue Sky at KLS Rugby and on Threads. I 2024 prediction. We're all going to forget what either Blue Sky or Threads is by 2024.
Oh
But we don't know
God,
which
yeah.
one yet. That's the only thing. 2023 was a
Probably.
big opening year for this podcast, but it won't stop there. Expect big interviews, wall-to-wall Six Nations coverage with potentially the lads that I'm talking to right now. Who knows? And then a fair share of provincial chat as well. So stay tuned for that. As always, thanks home again to everyone for listening. Thanks to the lads for joining me. If you like what you see or hear, please do subscribe. But for now, and until next time, take it easy.